Right, well, I left it to the last minute. It's the 31st of January today. I'm going to do the sowing and growing video for February. But before I do that, I always just like to sort of run through what I said I was going to do in January and show you whether it worked or not. Because a lot of people say, oh, don't sow anything in January. And I obviously do sow quite a lot of things in January. And so I like to show the evidence. Sometimes I'm proved right and sometimes I'm proved wrong. So I just sort of sweep through the whole sort of sowing guide for January so you can see the sort of overview of all the things that we tried to get done. And then we'll go into the details. And the first thing was the sweetheart strawberries, which I didn't sow. I just moved them from outside, cleaned them up and put them in the polytunnel. And really they don't show much of that signs of life at the moment. They're pretty much dormant. The second one was the celery. You can see that's growing quite nicely. We did a bit of an experiment to see whether it germinated better on the surface or better sown sort of 2 or 3 millimeters deep under compost, and the ones that were under the compost did much better. I will do a bit of a catch-up video on all the sowing and pricking out and things, which have all the details of that. The peppermint's just coming up. The parsley's looking quite nice, and yeah, so that was most of what I did on the 5th of January, but there was a few other things. The peas, they're down the allotment now ready for planting out, so those are the Oregon sugar pod and the sugar snap peas, so they're looking quite healthy. The cherry bell radish, I actually planted some of those out, planted half of them out on the allotment, and half of them in these big sort of trays here, and they're getting a few hours of extra grow light time just to help them along. So hopefully I'll harvest those first and then I'll harvest the ones on the allotment a few weeks later. So the Mokum carrots, they didn't germinate, not a one germinated, so they've been resown. Talk about that later. The golden beetroot and the Pablo, so the Burpee's golden beetroot and the Pablo red beetroot, they're here. And the golden beetroot's sort of a bit slower, but it's actually looking really healthy. The Pablo still is also looking really nice. I'm going to keep it though in these trays. Normally I'd plant it out at this time, at this size. It's certainly big enough to plant out. But I haven't got any bed space available, so I put it into these bigger modules, which means it can stay in these probably for, you know, another 3 or 4 weeks and be quite happy. And by then I should have space to plant it out. I don't recommend doing a lot of beetroot this early, and definitely not golden beetroot this early. I'm doing it because I like a continuous harvest and I like to experiment, and I've got plenty of space. So yeah, most beetroot, get on and do that later on. The bull's blood, in the end, I didn't prick any out and pot it on, because I just didn't have enough space for it, because I've got 2 trays of these. I've only got 1 in here. So the salad rocket, well, obviously salad rocket's a real fast grower. That's here at the moment, and that's coming on really nicely. So I should probably be picking that in 2 weeks' time. Salad rocket is not ideal for sowing at this time of year, but as long as you do lots of successions and pick it quickly, then it's a worthwhile harvest. The seascape strawberries, they're doing really nicely. So they looked like that when I took them into the house and put them under grow lights for 10 days. And now they look like that. And yeah, what a difference. All that lovely new growth. Loads of flower buds. In fact, I've got a few flowers on each of the plants now, and I am using my little soft brush to pollinate those every couple of days. Just be really gentle and just sort of tickle them with that, and that's kind of all they need. Strawberries will wind pollinate as well, but there's not much wind obviously in here at this moment in time, and there's no pollinating insects really to speak of. So yeah, so they're coming on nice. I'm hoping for an April harvest from these, and they're looking like, you know, might even get a few strawberries in March, but I have a lot of successions of strawberries because I really like them, so I like to get them as early as possible and as late as possible, and I've got a guide about that. link in the description. So next up are the little Savoy cabbages, and I sowed 9 and I've got 8. I only need 6, so I'm happy with those. They're coming on quite nicely, and I should be planting those out in a few weeks' time. The potatoes, the early potatoes, what have I done with those? Oh, they're up here. They've all broken surface now. So I've got Charlotte's, Swift's and Vita Noir or Vita Noir. The Vita Noir are the most interesting one. They're the sort of purpley coloured ones, and they were the first up. So they're looking really nice. They're home saved seeds. The Charlotte are home saved seeds, and the Swift are bought seed potatoes. Swift will come first, then the Vita Noir probably second, and then the Charlotte's probably third. The turnips, they're up here. They're looking okay. I've also got some of those planted out in trays, and the rest of those will probably be planted out pretty soon. Most of these things have been under grow lights for about 10 days or thereabouts, and now they're in the greenhouse, hardening off really before planting. The spinach, I've got 2 successions of spinach. So this is the one that I did on the 14th, so just over 2 weeks ago. So that's not looking too bad. It's a week or so away from planting. And then that's my next succession there. And yeah, and I've just made ready the bed that's going into. So I'll be really pleased to get that planted, because it did have salad onions in it. I was harvesting those salad onions, but then the big freeze hit and they all returned to mush. So I'm rapidly replanting anything that I lost, and that spinach is going to be one of those things. We really like spinach, so we always have plenty of takers for spare spinach. Salad onions, I did Lilia and North Holland Blood Red. They are up here. The Lilia are all germinated. The North Holland Blood Red are not quite germinated yet. So I'll probably take this tray back into the house. It has been in the house in the cool bedroom. And I'll probably just leave it in there for another few days until they come up, hopefully. And I did a germination test on really old seeds of Stir-On, Red Baron, and they're not looking good. So I'm pleased I got those out of the way, because I don't want to be taking up sort of main crop onion sowing space with seeds that aren't going to go anywhere. So I'll probably be switching to fresh seeds of those. The Hillary summer leeks, they're somewhere around here, there, and they're all coming up quite nicely. So, you know, the only leeks I do at this time of year are the summer leeks. I don't do my main crop leeks until much later. So then there's the Redstone Pak Choi, which are multi-sowed, so they're all coming up there, really nice. They're colouring up quite nicely. And then there's the Tatsoi, it's coming up okay. I've got quite a lot of Asian greens that I've just recently planted out, so I'm going to be awash with Asian greens if they all succeed. And so then I re-sowed the carrots with Sugar Snacks, and there's a few of those come up so far. We'll see how they do. And then there's all the lettuces, so they're all there, just ready for pricking out. So they were sown 21st, so 10 days ago. And yeah, they've been under grow lights for about 3 or 4 days. And I say they're ready for pricking out, and they'll go back under grow lights for a couple of weeks. So then that's it. Right, so give me a minute and I'll switch over to February. And yeah, I'll just sort of give you an idea of all the things that we're going to hopefully sow in February, so you get an idea of the whole glorious selection. Well, I'll have a drink. And yeah, let's get started with February. I'll preface this by saying I am doing a lot of this under grow lights in the house, and a lot of tender things here that won't cope with the frost, won't even cope with, less than 10 degrees or something like that, probably, ideally have 15 degrees. It's really expensive to keep this greenhouse at 15 degrees in winter. So all of this stuff is in the house. My house is pretty well insulated. And so even at night, even when it's cold, even with the heating off, it tends not to drop much below sort of 11, 12 degrees, something like that, which is fine for everything that I'm going to be sowing in February. It's not warm enough for quite a lot of things to set fruit. So I will, when I'm ready for things to set fruit, like early cucumbers, early courgettes, early peppers and things like that, they need to really be above 15 degrees to set fruit. Then they can cope with a little bit lower temperatures, but just during that setting fruit period, they need to be above 15. So I try to do that in the conservatory, get them set fruit, and then by about mid-April, something like that, probably a bit later, depends on long-range weather forecast really, I'll move them in here. And then for a few weeks, I'll have to heat this greenhouse so that, they continue to set fruit. And that will probably cost me about a third of the value of the harvest that I'll take from those crops. So it's quite a big investment. It's a big greenhouse, this, 8x14. So it's quite a big investment, about a third of the harvest value, but it's so much fun to grow all this early stuff. Right, let's get into it. So I've got one germination test of my onions still to do, so I'll do that with the Zebrun. Zebrun are notorious actually for being really rubbish germinators, but once they grow, they're a really great onion stroke shallot to grow. So I'll do that germination test, and then 2 weeks later they should have germinated, and if they haven't, I'll know that I need new seeds, or I won't sow my main crop Zebrun onions. I like to do my germination tests in compost rather than in tissue paper, because it just kind of gives you a better indication of the viability of the seeds as to whether they'll actually really germinate, a centimetre down in compost. Quite often things will germinate in tissue paper and then actually give you really rubbish germination in compost. So that's the way I like to do it, but obviously you can do it the way you want. Next up are the aubergines. I don't do very many aubergines. I'm just going to put them in here underneath these grow lights, a couple of pots down here, and lift these grow lights up obviously because they're kind of on these shelves, so they're on adjustable hangers. I'll do my next succession of these little Savoy cabbages here, and then I'll do something, things a bit more exciting. So I'm going to do my first succession of party time cucumbers, and I'm going to do those in the conservatory. And in the past, it's been a bit tricky to do cucumbers in the conservatory because my conservatory doesn't get a huge amount of light, but I've got these grow lights now that hang vertically, so that will help me out a little bit. Actually, what I did want to mention is I've actually got flowers on my peas at the moment, so I'm quite happy about that. I absolutely love peas, and of course the grandkids really love peas, so I'm just pulling out all the stops to see if I can get really early peas. And for me, lots of people talk about, oh, it's so expensive. It's worth spending like £1.50 or something on electricity for the grow lights for the time that it's required to get something fun like early peas. It's a hobby, it's good fun. So party time's the one I start with, and they'll probably grow either in the corners of the greenhouse, maybe where the peas are, perhaps the peas will go outside, or they may grow up here and then along the underside of these shelves and take advantage of the heat that's coming off these grow lights, and obviously being quite high up they'll get a bit more heat as well at night when the grow lights are off. And it's been an interesting experiment, so I'm really looking forward to doing the cucumbers. I had a really nice experience with the cucumbers last year. We got a really nice harvest out of the greenhouse. So this helicopter get over, have a drink. Right, so next up are the broad beans. So The broad beans that we sowed back in, I don't know, like late October, something like that, they have all gone. So they've all been either turned to mush by the very cold weather, knocked over and eaten by slugs and snails by the gales, or goodness knows what, they've all gone anyway. So they were on Debbie's plot and she went to do the weeding and found there was none left. So I will be sowing replacement broad beans. We've actually had a really bad few years of broad beans overwintered. Just, you know, the winters are getting harsher here. And I know a lot of people have much harsher winters than we do, but, you know, it's often getting down sort of -7, -8 degrees, you know, really cold, often really windy, really wet. It's just not great for overwintered crops that are under cover. So yeah, I think we'll forget broad beans overwintered from now on and just start them about now and plant them out towards the end of February. So peppers. So my peppers have got green fly. So they're not in here because I don't want the peppers to sort of not cross-pollinate, I don't know, infect other crops. So they're in the house at the moment. I've sprayed them with SB Invigorator, and I'm hoping that I can get it under control. I've tried a couple of times. This is the second spraying actually of them, and yeah, we'll see. It's a tricky one, that, because obviously once you've got green fly, you really have got to kind of isolate those plants so you don't want the green fly to spread. And every time you spray them, you're sort of increasing the likelihood that you're going to sort of knock the plants back a little bit. Although SB Invigorator is a kind of fairly kind spray to use. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. So anyway, main crop peppers. So those are the super earlies, which are going to go on here. Once I've cleared all these sort of lettuces and spinach and beet leaf greens and strawberries and all these things that I've got down here. Once all that's cleared, I lift these lights up and then pop the peppers in pots along there and give them a few extra hours of daylight in here, and as I say, raise the temperature in here at night to about 15 degrees centigrade for a few weeks. So I'm going to do long yellow Ringo, lunchbox, which are multicoloured pepper, little ones for, well, not just for kids of course, but you know, kids love them. New Ace, which is a red one, Akron, which is a red one, Bright Star, which is an orange one, Red Skin, which is a red one. And so I've got a mix there of orange, yellow and red, lots of red. And then for our chili peppers, we don't do many chili peppers, we just do Anaheim. It's quite a nice one, it's quite prolific, it's nice and big, so it's easy to work with. It's not super hot. In fact, you can just vary the heat as to whether, when you pick it, you know, with green, when you pick it green, it's mild, and when you pick it red, it's really hot. So it's really easy. More salad rocket, and then the tomatoes. Right, so I do my tomatoes in these hanging baskets, which have currently got lettuces in them. So these lettuces will be finished by the time I need the pots for the tomatoes. And I am going to do a few varieties. I'm going to do Tumbling Tom Yellow and Red Profusion, just two varieties in fact. So a red and a yellow. I'm experimenting with the two to see which does the best, but also just gives me a bit of variety. I had a really nice experience with the Red Profusion last year. We were picking those in May. Just like peppers, you know, ideally they would like the temperature to be fairly high. So if I'm doing 15 degrees for the peppers and the cucumbers, then the tomatoes are going to love it, basically. Tomatoes could cope with a little bit lower temperature, but they'll love it at that temperature. So yeah, as I say, it's going to cost me a few pounds, maybe as much as £20 perhaps in heating for those couple of weeks. Depends on the weather obviously, but that's what it cost me last year, I think, about £20. So again, it's such a good investment for the joy of all this early fruit. But also it actually pays for itself several times over from the value of those harvests. So next up, I am going to try actually some sun gold and some honeycomb. I'm not kind of sure at the moment exactly what I'm going to do with them. They might go in the corners. So if two of the corners, the corners are heavily used. So I have French beans in the corners, I have cucumbers in the corners, I might have tomatoes in the corners. At the moment, I've got apricots and an apricot and a nectarine in the corner, and they are just in bud at the moment, and they're looking lovely. I can't wait for them all to sort of burst into flower, which won't be very long now. And obviously they also need it frost-free. That's one of the reasons I'll keep this greenhouse frost-free sort of from now on, so that when all these flowers come out, which are coming out at the moment, all these strawberry flowers, all these nectarine and apricot flowers, they need this space to be frost-free. So yeah, so I might put the tomatoes in the corners. I might try growing them horizontally, so sort of let them grow up a little bit, and then along the underneath of the shelves, just sort of toying with that idea. I might not even grow them to maturity. I might just grow them for the side shoots. So just start a couple of plants, one of each, then use those side shoots for my main crop tomato plants, so I don't use as many seeds. I don't know, there's so many options, and why tie yourself down by making decisions too early? So anyway, they're the things I'm toying with. Next up, my main crop onions. Right, so I don't do my main crop onions until the middle of February, but I've tested the germination of most of them, so I'm kind of pretty confident about them. And the early ones that I've started are going to be used mainly for salad onions, and most of those have been planted out already. So I'm doing Caravelle Rose Roscoff, I think that's how you pronounce that, which looks beautiful. It's a sort of pink one. It's a good keeper. Keeping is important to us because we grow a lot of onions. We keep a lot of onions. We've got a lot of onions in store right now. So we generally like to grow good keepers. Next one is El Ister. I've never grown that one before. I don't really know. I just sort of found it in my seed packet bag, box rather. I can't remember buying it, but anyway, I did. So I thought I might try it. If anybody's actually grown it, let me know. So it's Alister, and it looks a bit like Zebrun. And I'm doing Carmen and maybe Red Baron, if I can get some that germinate, and Zebrun. So we don't grow a huge number of different varieties, but that's enough, and that's plenty of variety for us. And we might do Vento. I think I've got a packet of Vento seeds, and Nigel from the Muddy Boots channel, he's been singing the praises of Vento. And of course we've got loads of tough ball in the ground already, tough ball's an overwintered onion, so that's harvested early in sort of June, July time. And so that's a good selection. So next up are the cauliflowers. I'm doing Graffiti and Orkney. I've got some cauliflowers up here, and I've got lots that I've just planted out, and I'm in the process of planting more out. So these are just the spares. And then I'll do some Marathon Calabrese. I tend to always just do Marathon Calabrese all times of year. It's a really flexible one. And again, I've got loads of Calabrese ready for planting out on the allotment at the moment. And then I'll do another succession of the radishes, Scarlet Globe. I might do a few of those. I've got loads of different seed packets for radishes. I'll just see what takes my fancy as I get closer to sowing date. I'll do some Mokum. I've got some new, so I mentioned that the Mokum that I sowed back in January failed to germinate. They've sent me new seeds, really fresh, straight from America, probably from Johnny's seeds originally, and be excited to get those sown, because mokum is currently my favoured carrot for eating fresh in salads. It's such a sort of juicy, crunchy, sweet carrot. So I'm really excited for that. I grew it last year and yeah, it was the star of the show. And then I'm doing pony cucumbers. So that's my next batch, really just to compare with the previous one, which I can't remember the name of. And again, I'm starting those in the conservatory, but everything I start in the conservatory eventually makes its way in here. And then my next batch of potatoes, as I mentioned, I've got my first batch up there. And the potatoes go along here. So get a little bit of light from these grow lights, and obviously again I'll be keeping this greenhouse frost free, so they should grow on pretty well. And then another batch of lettuce. I like to do 9 different varieties of lettuce each sort of succession that I do, which gives me a really nice mix in the salads. In this batch there's a few dark coloured ones, sort of reddy coloured ones. There's Navara, for example, and Haflex and Blastex, and Lola Rossa, and flashy lightning butter oak. That's got some really nice flecks of sort of dark sort of red on the leaves. But I'm doing even more sort of red sort of colours. You know, the red ones are super healthy by comparison with the green ones, so we try and get as much sort of colour in our lettuces as we can. But then the green ones are super mild and crunchy and lovely as well, so we like a mix. So you can see all the details of all the different varieties and things down in the description below. But yeah, so just take a look at those if you're interested in the lettuces. But I'm doing one new one this year, which is Apache, which is a really nice dark red colour. And then I've got my Asian greens. So I've already got Asian greens here, as I mentioned. Going to do one more batch probably before summer. And that's Komatsuma, Resident Pak Choi, and Red Tatsoi. And that's it then probably for the Asian greens for this year. And oh, and just green Tatsoi as well. And then I'm doing my courgettes first. You know, my super early courgettes again to go in here. Be a little bit of space for them, not very much. It fills up pretty quickly, this greenhouse. But I do 2 successions of early courgettes. One goes in the polytunnel. Once I can keep, well, I can't keep that frost-free. It just has to be frost-free. So I use a combination of fleece and bubble wrap to sort of keep those plants alive. But I won't do those anyway until March. The ones that I'm doing in late February will go in here. Again, it's frost-free in here. Courgettes again to set fruit and for those fruit to thrive. It needs to be at 15 degrees again, so you really need all these fruits basically are taking advantage of that increase in temperature. I'm doing 2 bush ones, Green Bush and Midnight F1, so they can go in little pots on here. It seems like everything's going on here, doesn't it? But some of them might be on the floor down there. And then Zephyr, which is our favourite, which is not at all a bush one. It goes a bit wild. Again, it might go in one of the corners. You know, I'm using up all these corners. I ain't got enough corners, so it might go in the middle or something. But yeah, it can go a bit wild. So I'm going to try and train it vertically anyway, and see how that does. But it's our favourite one. And we do quite a few courgettes because by the time we're harvesting these, which tends to be sort of June time, end of May, early June, that's the time we're running out of squash in the stored squash, Crown Prince squash. So we like obviously to have a continuity of some sort of cucurbits in our diet, and that's the way we do it. And then my early main crop beetroots. So I'll do 3 varieties of those. I'll do Albina, which is a white one, Pablo again, which is what that one is, which is a red one, and Burpees Golden, which is what that one is. This is about the earliest I would even consider doing a golden beetroot, and even then they don't thrive. The white ones and the golden ones, they really like it warmer, so you've got to really put them in your warmest spot. So I'll probably put them in the warmest spot that I can find, in one of my low tunnels or cold frames or something like that. I haven't decided even where I'm going to put them yet. One of the places I find that's quite good for the beetroot is at the back of my pepper tunnels. So all those main crop peppers that I talked about earlier, they all go 6 to a bed in my low tunnels, and there's kind of space at the back of those low tunnels to plant an early beetroot crop, and plant that out. Say I'm doing these 28th of February, so by about the end of March, early April, I'll be planting those out. The peppers don't go in for another month or so, well, maybe 6 weeks. By then the beetroot are pretty well established at the backs. Put the peppers in. Peppers are still quite small plants, maybe this sort of size, something like that. So it takes those a good month or so before they grow, big enough to start to sort of shade out the beetroot a little bit. But by then the beetroot are almost ready. But the beetroot are taking advantage of being in a nice warm-ish, at least during the day, low tunnel, so that tends to be the way that I do the beetroot. And the last thing is just like one last batch probably of the Rubino spinach, which is what I've got there, and then I'll switch over to a spinach that's more resistant to bolting, something like Santa Cruz or Mikado or something like that. It's a little bit cold to do Mikado in March, but it's certainly not too cold to do Santa Cruz, so I'll probably do that. And that is February. Now that is an exciting February. I'm really keen. There's a lot going on, obviously, in there. Please do, if you're interested in any of this, go down into the description. There's a link to the database that I've been looking at on the laptop here. You can look at that on your phone or the laptop or a tablet or anything you want. You can extract the data from here and put it into your own spreadsheet if you want, or you can take a copy of my data in Airtable and sort of copy it into your own Airtable. So there's loads of options. It's all described in my ebook as well, so that's got all the growing guides for everything that I've talked about, all the different successions, where to plant them out, how much time under grow lights and all that sort of thing. If you want to use grow lights, if you don't, then you can use the greenhouse as well. A bit later on probably than my dates. And if you want even more, do take a look at my newsletter. You can find that at steverichards.substack.com, and again there's a link in the description below. And that's just a weekly newsletter. It takes you through all the different things that I'm doing each week and what I'm planning to do in the future, so that you can keep up. And my name's Steve. This is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel. I'll see you soon.